I'm joined by some of my favorite guests, Felipe and Petra Chou. You may remember they joined us to share about their previous book, The Voice of the Saints in Mongolia, and that was a fantastic episode. I think it's one of our top episodes in terms of how many people watched it. I think we had like um, over 16,000 people tune in
Oh,
for it, which
wow.
yeah, which for all the saints is really great, and so it's clearly a topic that I love and the audience loves as well. Talking about the pioneers of the church around the world, and so how fitting that we get to discuss today the voices of Latter Day Saint women in Pacific and Asia, and that's obviously a much broader topic than just Mongolia. So I wonder if you could share with us the purpose of the book, but also the importance that you see in specifically focusing on sharing and preserving and the voices of Latter Day Saint women specifically.
I think that one of the things that we want to highlight is the pioneer women of the church, right? And so um, we always say, that's the other half of the story of the restoration. We often talk about the important men that help with the restoration. We go to stake presidents and mission presidents and temple presidents and so forth. And so the story comes from that side, but that's only half of the story of the restoration. The other half comes from the women of the church, those faithful women pioneers. So we want to make sure that we also highlighted, temple matrons, other women mission leaders, and a whole bunch of other stories here that we have, from translators to Relief Society presidents, and so forth.
And I often, as a woman myself, as a Latter-day woman, I am a pioneer in my family. Often women have so much tender spiritual experience that they share in their life, but often the church record mainly have most of the record written about the leaders, the priesthood leaders, but often the woman story, the pioneer woman story, have not that focus on. So that's why it's hopefully from our effort we want to bring the people to get to know all these faithful women, incredible story that they share and how they played, how the restorations of this gospel in this foreign country in Pacific and Asia, how important, significant role that they play in that sense.
Yeah, we want to make sure the women's voices are brought up. And also Pacific and Asia, we want to make sure that, sometimes it doesn't get as much attention as some of the stories in the U.S., right? The early history of the church is mostly New York to Kirtland and to Missouri and Nauvoo and to Salt Lake. But we really want to take our, the saints to the Pacific and the Asia areas to tell some of those stories from those women.
Yeah, that's a good point because you, being a UK member, we hear a lot about our story because of the emigrations to Nauvoo and kind of how that financially saved the church in that period, and the first missionaries of the apostles. But actually, when you look at it, we've got about 180,000 members in the UK, and you look at, say, the Philippines, for example, that's about to cross a million, and all of these different countries where the church is growing so rapidly, and you think, well, hang on a minute, what's their story? What's going on over there? So can you help me understand where this book kind of came from? You mentioned that it was a conference. Was there a reason that the Pacific and Asia was like? Is it pertinent to Brigham Young University, Hawaii, that you would do these stories at a conference over there, or is this kind of we really want to celebrate this area? And yeah, I would love some context into the creation of it.
Sure. So it used to be called the Mormon Pacific Studies Conference, and they worked in partnership with BYU Hawaii. And so, but for this conference, we were invited to be part of that committee, and then they've updated one. We got rid of the name Mormon, right? And so it changed to church history. And then besides the Pacific, we realized the mission of BYU Hawaii, even though we focus a lot on the Pacific, actually the mission of BYU Hawaii is not just Pacific, but also Asia. That's our target
Population.
population that the Board of Education had specified as part of the mission of BYU Hawaii is to Asia and Pacific. So as part of preparing for the conference, we wanted to make sure that we were covering both Asia and the Pacific. And then, as part of the conference, also, one thing that hasn't been done very well before is that we had the conference and you have presenters and a few local people hear about it, and that kind of ends of it, right? But we want to make sure that we came out with a book because then we can share to the a worldwide audience in that way. And so we made some changes to the conference, and then from the conference we selected some presentations. We want to make sure that we had a good representation that was both Pacific and Asia, whereas in the past it was primarily, like I mentioned, Pacific. But you will see in our book then that about half is Pacific now and half is Asia to give a balance there.
Mhm.
And the other thing also, as we were selecting stories, we want to make sure there is again, that we kind of had a broad variety. So if we had 20 presentations in Hawaii about Hawaii, then maybe we had maybe a couple of those stories in the book. And if you only had like two or three in the Philippines, then we want to make sure we picked up one of those stories for the Philippines. So the layout of our book was, yes, drawn from the conference, but then we had to adjust it to make sure that we have coverage for multiple countries.
And then when you say white woman, but it's just like at the beginning of a chapter, we would say this is just our humble attempt to bring this monumental task of bringing forth all these voices of the woman, of the Latter-day women in Pacific Asia, and then we want to share the story, and also most importantly, share their voices. So their voices represent something, the faith that we cannot ignore.
Hmm. Absolutely. And from that, how do the I guess how do the spiritual journeys that you see from Latter Day Saint women in the Pacific and Asia differ, or you know, differ from other parts of the world? Were there any kind of cultural perspectives that you could offer that may be unique for a big chunk of our listeners in say Europe and America?
Okay, these pioneer women share, like two of them at least share one important task is they were involved in the translation of the scripture, Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenant, and Pearl Greek Prize. They two of them, the lady mother, sure, and then she
From Thailand.
from Thailand, and then we call it Monica from Mongolia. They share a unique story in there how they interact with the spirit, how they guide the translation process. Probably those are the very unique pioneer story that they could share in that country. I heard it not only the first time I heard it from other people, but they were heavily involved with the translation of the Book of Mormon to bring it forth in their own language. This is something that is very important. I'm gonna Felipe can add to it. I'm gonna find a little extra what she said in the story. I think it's very important. Okay, go ahead,
Hmm.
Felipe.
Yeah, and I think one of it is, so in the Pacific, these are many of these women in the Pacific are very much in tune with the spirit. Many of them come from Aboriginal background where being close to the spirit and having visions and dreams are thing that's part of their culture, everyday life for them. Um, and the same in Asia. Many of the women in Asia, are especially North Asia, are usually more um, what's the word? They I don't know if there's a good translation put this in, but very polite and courteous and always in the background, right? They in some of these cultures is very much the man is up front leading, and the women are usually quiet and you know
Submissive, I should say.
submissive behind the scenes in the background. So we really want to push them forward so that they are by sharing their stories more on an even and equal footing with our priesthood brethren, which is really what the what we're taught in the church, right? Neither's the man without the woman, neither's the woman without the man. Adam and Eve walked side by side, just like Joseph and Emma. Emma was just as much of an equal to the prophet Joseph Smith. And so we want to make sure that we broke through some of that culture, local culture, and help them to see some of the gospel culture by highlighting the powerful stories and really the role that many of these women played. Maybe they weren't the temple president, but without a temple matron, we don't have temple work for the women, and without the women, a man can be sealed for time and eternity, right?
And also one thing that we want to mention also of the temple matrons, they also share the same like priesthood power that they have, and then they bring the light to this world. And if you allow, I want to share this part of the story. I think it's
Yes,
very
please.
touching for me from Mother Shuri. She's a royalty actually from Thailand, but
Oh,
she decided to join the church, and then of course she got kicked out from the palace, and she was no longer a royalty, so she cannot she no more financial support. um
It's
but
very similar to the story of Moses,
yeah,
when he was in the Pharaoh's court. And then after he highlighted his faith, then he was basically, you know, thrown out of the palace and became poor, right?
yeah.
I thought
So
you were going to say that it was very similar to the story of Prince Harry there, but in the UK.
oh wow,
uh,
well, you
but
have a modern day example, I guess.
so,
Okay.
which when was this from? Sorry, what kind of um, time
Oh,
was
This
this?
is in the 1900s. So
oh, she's just
whether
not.
she,
Yeah, she's just not too like 1970 70 in the 70
Wow,
actually. It's not
yeah,
that
amazing!
far away. So this is what exactly what she said when she was translating the Book of Mormon, and she was struggling with the word priesthood. Okay, the priesthood word, she have a hard time how to translate it.
because that word didn't exist in Thai.
Yeah. And then that's what she was saying, this quote of what she said. There was a frightening moment that occurred in Mother Cherry's house one night. While she was trying to translate a word into Thai, suddenly her room, oh, is Elder White said that, what she said about her. Her room became dark. Her body was paralyzed and could not move. She was shocked and frightened. When she looked out the window, she saw a large shadow outside. Then she saw a dark personage in her room. This person stared at her, and she could not move or say from a word. She could feel Satan trying to stop her from completing God's work. She felt that she might die and prayed that if she died, that at least God's word would continue. As she continued to pray, the darkness in the room was suddenly replaced by light. Mother Sherry closed her eyes and she could feel someone standing beside her. The bottom of his clothing brushed against her. She knew it. It was Moroni, who had helped Joseph Smith. Then she heard a gentle voice and then said, "Open your eyes and look up." And she was too scared to open her eyes. But finally, when she did, the word priesthood that she was been trying to translate into Thai appeared in Thai letter on her ceiling. And then this is a Thai letter. I cannot read it. Sorry. That term was later be registered with the Thai government and became an official part of the Thai language. Other faiths would also come to adopt the word to represent the priesthood among their own churches and congregations because of
Mhm.
that.
So she actually created the word priesthood in Thai,
Hmm.
and now it's part of the Thai dictionary.
Yeah.
that other
Mm.
faiths and other, people use every day today now.
Moroni inspired her. This is the word.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And you see some of the similarities with the Joseph Smith's experience in the sacred grove, right? Where the adversary comes to try to stop the work. But
Yeah.
then, in this case, she had the angel Moroni come to help her.
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot of wonderful stories like that,
Hmm.
real life experiences that, we think it's not happening in the modern times, but it is. Just like, when Wilford Woodruff was in in the in Europe, in the United Kingdom, and in Great Britain, and had some of those experiences where he has to raise his hand to the square and cast out evil spirits to be able to move the work forward. And anyway,
And then she was very close to the queen. When the queen, she was kicked out when she joined the church. But after the queen passed away, she was invited back into the royal house. And but she denied that invitation. And then she explained. Someone explained that she chose to stay outside of the palace as a normal who served God only. She decided to do that, so she didn't want to go back to a royal life.
yeah,
She can serve the Lord freely because of that. And at that time, because the monarchy is really tied closely to the Thai palace. So, and if you do that, which means that she cannot serve God freely because of that. So she didn't want to do that. She break a tie.
it's an inspiring story of somebody that grew up in the royal palace
Hmm.
and then was willing to really give up everything for the gospel,
Yeah.
and then later becomes the translator
Hmm.
for the Thai Book of Mormon and the
Hmm.
Doctrine and Covenants and
Hmm.
Latter Day Scripture, and really a blessing for the church, but
Hmm.
with great sacrifice.
And I really like the title of that chapter. It's called "From like from the palace to the dust, and then from the dust to the cloud." So she descend from the palace to the dust, and then when she moved forward with dignity and faith, she built her way back from the dust to the clouds.
That
Mm.
is incredible. I feel that it's such a moving story. I feel speechless listening to it. I can't believe, how have I never heard of that story before?
So you
How
should
is
read
that
the
not
book
like
then. Read all the book. You will see all these inspiring stories in there.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you'd think that kind of story and that person would be known by every member and sort of a family home evening staple, perhaps. But that's an incredible story, and it. So there's this quote. I was trying to remember who said it. It may have been Charles Spurgeon or some kind of uh, preacher like that, Christian, and he said we forget that God speaks to us chiefly through dreams and visions. And that's
Hmm.
Yeah,
something that I've always admired about the people in the Pacific and Asia. I think there's
Hmm.
this deep level of faith um, that I don't know enables them to um, be in tune with that more. And you alluded to that before, Felipe, that you
Hmm.
see these dreams and visions and spiritual experiences that I guess we don't. Well, we know kind of that that's what we link people in the Pacific, especially, I think, are linked to experiences like that. And you've found that to be true, have you, in your kind of work?
Hmm.
very much so. Yeah, I think maybe in our Western culture, we hear about it, but it's not something that we feel it's an everyday occurrence for us, right? It's
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of Joseph Smith had that experience in the Sacred Grove, or the John Johnson Farm receiving Doctrine and Covenants Section 76, the vision of the 3 degrees of glory. But for the people in the Pacific and many in Asia, this is just commonplace for them. Part of their culture is dreams and visions and heavenly visitations is not so foreign to them as it is to us in our Western culture.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's something that I was surprised by on my mission, and it was actually a beautiful thing. Was just how common people would share testimony of
Mhm.
experiences like that, and I'd be like, Wait, hold on. Say that
Yeah.
again. And they treated it, yeah, as though it were kind of a common experience, and I find that really fascinating. Now, someone I wanted to ask you about, because there's a whole chapter dedicated to her as well, is if you could teach us about Kim Do-pil, the first Relief Society president in Korea.
Mhm.
I would
Sure.
love to learn more about her.
Yeah. So uh, it's interesting because she is there. There is a Dr. Kim that gets highlighted a lot, meaning a brother, Dr. Kim, that kind of you could say was the father of the church in Korea. He joined the church. He did a lot of things to be able to help the missionaries and to help the church to be able to get its foothold in Korea. But there's another Dr. Kim that doesn't get highlighted as much, and that is this wonderful sister that becomes the first Relief Society president of the church in Korea, right? The first Korean woman to be Relief Society president, who loved the gospel, loved the Book of Mormon, who taught, and all these members would flock to hear her, whether it's during teaching Sunday school or at a special fireside because of her gospel knowledge.
So also we
So,
call Dr. Kim. People may think she has a PhD, but actually it's not. So that's why confused with the other Dr. Kim. He actually has a PhD. But this Dr. Kim, because people call him, she is a doctor of the Book of Mormon.
yeah,
And then this is exactly what she said. Through my study, I learned that that book is the most powerful missionary ever used in the church. So she has so much knowledge about the Book of Mormon. So as Felipe said, was teaching the Sunday school. So that's why is people call her Dr. Kim.
yeah. So, Sister Kim is
Uh-huh.
a wonderful example of a faithful woman who joined the church, who served as the first Relief Society president in Korea, and really helped the foreign missionaries to be able to dive in and be able to share the gospel among the Koreans.
Yeah.
She's a woman that went through a lot of hardship.
Yeah.
They had to move around because of the Korean War. They had to move to China for a while. They moved back. She lost her husband. They have a store that they would use to sell goods to American GIs that, because of the war, was destroyed by fire. And so she had to kind of restart her life multiple times, and fairly hard because she also had to do that without her husband. And for that period of time, 1950s, 1960s, is really hard for a woman to be able to run a family or a household without a husband. But she was very diligent, focused on education, want to make sure her children got a good education so that they could have a better life. But also a woman of great faith who, somehow got connected to an American GI, and then researched a lot, and then eventually was converted and then joined the church.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very humble, but women of great faith and
Mm-hmm.
great a spiritual giant, really.
Yeah, Sister Palmer, she was the wife of the mission leader at that time. You get acquainted with her, and then in her writing, it said that Sister Kim always served as a theology teacher, and she devoted her time doing genealogy, many updated many family records, and despite she's suffering from arthritis, towards the end of her life, she suffered arthritis, and then she also quoted her that she is a dynamic and delightful woman. And then she always spent her lifetime studying the history, art, and religion. So,
And very similar to Mother Shri in Thailand, these women, their dream is to be able to go to the temple.
Mm.
And at that time there were no temples, right? In Thailand or a temple in Korea, and so and they keep praying for it, and eventually they have that opportunity, right? They'll go. She'll have the opportunity to go to Salt Lake, right? And to be able to get an endowment. But it's a big event, right? Because she will travel is a little different then, and because of her health. But she'll travel not knowing that she'll ever be able to come back to Korea. First to go see her daughter that had immigrated, who is not active in the church, but then she gets the opportunity to go to the temple, and then she's able to return to Korea, but it's just she's like a big celebrity in Korea because now she's doing firesides to tell people about her temple experience because none of the saints in Korea have been to the temple and just dream about going to the temple. And so she's able to teach them, about her trip and her experience and help the saints build a desire to be in the temple and to do what they can to be able to travel to a temple or eventually have a temple in Korea. But just wonderful, wonderful stories there.
Yeah.
And now the church in Korea is actually quite big now, right? There are temples in Korea now, aren't they? In South Korea,
That's
um,
right.
That's right.
and so was and I read that I think this may be Korea is that one of the Korean Supreme Court justices is a Latter Day Saint, right?
That's
Oh,
correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
pretty
the
cool.
church continues to grow there.
Yes. So
Yeah.
was it mainly introduced by the kind of GIs and the American influence during the Korean War? Would you say?
Yeah. You would see that most of uh, uh, the church in during World War II actually brought a lot of the American GIs, many who were Latter-day Saints
Yeah.
that started military service groups, and then from
Right.
there, then they employ some of the locals or had interaction with some of the local individuals that then helps to join the church and then start. So that's true in Korea, uh, in Taiwan, and so forth.
Hmm.
In a few places, you will have a few earlier missionaries uh, as well, but that's more in the Southeast Asia area.
Right. Well,
Now, one of the things
you,
that we've tried to do in the book is to give a good cross section, if you will. And you will notice, that we in the Pacific, we tried to cover a story in French Polynesia, where the church really started in the Pacific. But then we also tried to cover as many countries as we can, right? Hawaii, Tonga, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, Micronesia. And then the latter half of the book, we tried to cover countries in Asia, right?
Hmm.
Where we'll talk about a sister in Japan and then the one in Korea. We also talk about uh, we have a chapter that was written by Peter and Joyce that talk about Helen Foster Snow's and her
Her work in
time in
China.
China. And then of course we'll go to Hong Kong, Taiwan, then down to Thailand, Mongolia, and the Philippines. So we really tried to we weren't able to cover every country, but we tried to cross cover a good cross section. And the same thing with the stories. We tried to give a good cross section of stories, right? So we have to kind of really help the readers see the variety of experiences and roles that the women uh, were involved in to help build the church.
Hmm.
And so we have, for example, Chieko Okazaki's story that
Hmm.
one of our chapter authors writes about. Of course, most people know Chieko Okazaki because she was not just Hawaiian Japanese, but also because she was in the General Relief Society presidency, right? But we do cover stories of the first lady missionaries, right? The sister missionaries that we used to call lady missionaries in the Pacific. Their work with their husbands. We cover stories of translators that we talked about, one from Mongolia, one from Thailand, the first sister missionaries in Mongolia, or the first woman to serve as a service center manager for the whole church, one of the first sisters to serve as a principal for a church school in the Pacific, first Relief Society president, first Chinese temple matrons, and um, so you can see that we really try to cover a wide variety of stories from the different roles the different sisters perform to help build the kingdom in the Pacific and Asia area.
Mhm.
So something I wanted to learn about from you both is the you wrote a lot about temple matrons and specifically in Hong Kong and Taiwan, and I would love to hear some stories about them or why you or kind of what you learned about the role of the temple matron and the experiences that they were having over there.
Sure. I think the wonderful thing that President Nelson and President Bingham, who was a former Relief Society president, have done is really to highlight the that women have both priesthood power and authority. And that, of course, when we look back in church history, we think, oh, of course. But, I love how that's been highlighted a little more. I was in class the other day, and one of my students, we were talking about the priesthood power and authority that women have, right? And then, when we were discussing this in class, we said, well, certainly there is no exaltation, there is no temple ceiling without a woman. But it's not just women or husband and wife, but also the authority and the other ordinances that happened prior to that. And we talked about the importance of the initiatory work and how that came about. It was Joseph Smith giving uh, the ordinance, the initiatory work to his wife Emma, and then Emma being able to uh, share that wonderful blessing uh, with other women that's passed on to today. And all of a sudden, one of my students, he just, it's like the light bulbs went off and said, "Oh, I never thought of that. I guess we don't have men in the women's locker room to make sure that initiatory work is done for the women." And and so I think a lot of times, and so when Petra and I discussed this, we thought we highlight a lot of temple presidents, but we don't know of anybody that's really taken time to highlight the temple matrons, right? That work side by side along with the temple presidents, as a husband and wife. But the temple matrons are the ones that have a responsibility to help with the training of sisters that are called to be ordinance workers in the temple, to oversee, supervise some of those ordinances and some of the responsibilities that they have in the temple. And that kind of was the genesis of us starting to explore the stories of these Chinese temple matrons. And as we study about them, we've learned that many of them have quite a, church leadership pedigree, if you will. Most of them, prior to becoming a temple matron, serve as primary presidents, young women presidents, relief society presidents, in a branch, in a ward, in a district, at a state level. Um, some of them are spouses to uh, former Area 70s or spouses to former mission presidents and also serve as mission leaders.
Yeah, and I also want to share like Professor Barbara Morgan Gardner. She said something that very important about the woman. She said in her book, and then the woman could exercise priesthood power and authority also in the temple as well. And because of and that they can receive guidance from the Lord at an even high, a greater level because of the endowment they have received in the temple. And then because of that, they have power to overcome the sins of the world. They're better qualified to teach and can strengthen their early families. And temple matrons, just like their husbands, they serve as the temple presidents, act under this priesthood power and authority in the temple. So the women also have that power. Because of that, they are qualified to teach. They can be a better example, shine a light to the world.
Were there any specific temple matrons that inspired you in the writing of the book?
Yeah, one of them is Xie Fan. I think Xie Fan is a very prominent pioneer member in Taiwan, and
Oh,
uh, and then his wife, and him was called to be in the temple presidency, and then she just took it the calling willingly and cheerfully. That's what they said, and respond the commitment to do her best to the Lord in the service of the kingdom. And then she always provide high quality, high standard training to the temple workers, and then do it in such a efficiency and urgency. And they are the second Chinese, I guess, couple to serve in the Taipei temple presidency. And she always remembered that, confident that she said that herself shared the same responsibility as her husband to minister as steward of the temple, the house of the Lord. She shared the same stewardship as her husband. She is so confident and then so happy to do that. And yeah, something like that. So that is something that I like about her.
Yeah.
She took the rest. Her calling is her stewardship too. It's not like I'm just helping my husband. No, this is my stewardship to carry out this temple assignment as myself. So
Yeah, and the other one that I fought off was Sister Tai.
uh-huh.
So she is the wife of the first Chinese general authority, Elder Tai, who
oh,
then later he was in he's the first Chinese general authority. Um, he was in the second quorum of the 70s, and then of course after they were released from that calling, um, they also serve as mission leaders together, but then also as the temple president and matron in Hong Kong. And I love her humility and her love of the saints and her desire to make sure that the temple ordinances were done correctly, and then make sure that she helped the sister temple workers to learn their duties and responsibilities.
And I really like what she say about this calling. She said she testified that she had found favor in the eye of the Lord and that she could feel God's love as he extended the call to serve in his holy house. She's in the favor of the Lord. And very like Elder Beckner said, this unique combination of spiritual, physical, mental, emotional capacity, both male and female, was indeed to enact the plan of happiness. So they have to do it together to carry out this plan of happiness. If just a man or a woman, they cannot do that. So this is something that we want to highlight the importance of this and how important. And we always talk about like the past conference, how many times we heard about the highest power you can get is in the temple, right? So We believe that in order to exercise and enact the highest power from the Lord, we have to always go to the temple. So this job of these temple matrons is very important. And I bet they carry out the warmest smile. And I'm not saying that the man doesn't, but the woman does. Always make you feel welcome, right? Come, and then make you want to come back again because of so and so. The sister give you the biggest smile or like warmest hug that you can get from the temple.
Yeah. Sister Ku is another one that served as a temple matron in Hong Kong,
Mm-hmm.
and she had all these people from other parts, other countries that will make this, pilgrimage, if you will, this trek to get to the temple. In some cases, selling everything they have or having to quit their job to be able to take a week off to be able to take their families to the temple. And she would always bake them bread
Yeah.
and to give them something, a warm loaf of bread
Mm-hmm.
for all these families that would come and maybe, they'd stay at the temple patron housing, but you want to make sure that they feel welcome and the warmth and the love of the Lord as they came to the temple to be sealed together as a family.
And then, as you mentioned about the Hong Kong Temple is a very significant temple to me. Not because I grew up in Hong Kong, but Hong Kong Temple served like a bridge between the member in China, the member like around the world before other temple was built. A lot of people go to Hong Kong Temple to get their temple work done, and still a lot of member from mainland China they will come for a period of time to trying to get as many like names done as possible. At one time, Sister Gu, remember, this is a group from, I believe they have 6,000 names, proxy ordinances they have to get it done. And then at that time, temple have that time set, like when to open, when to close. But Sister Gu and Brother President Gu allow the member to stay in the temple all day, every day and then let them finish as much as possible. They have 6,000 names, all these ordinances, because you feel that these people, they desire greatly to feel the peace inside the temple. And then she said that's called. She said you see it in people's face as they come in, as much hardship in their face. Then you see them walking out of the temple, and they feel like their work is so much lighter, the walk is so much lighter. So they have lifted because of the Spirit lifted them up, and I think they have done so much good to do the temple of the work. And one thing I really like, Sister Guru, remember President Packer, the quorum of the 12 share during the training before they go into the mission presidency. And she said, being called to serve at the matron of the temple is the crowning joys of your church callings. So he expressly said that as a matron of the temple is a crowning joy. And I think it's a crowning glory that everyone can have if we go to the temple and worship the Lord.
I'm loving this so much. I'm just so enjoying hearing of these people, and yeah, knowing people from my mission who have made that journey to Hong Kong at considerable personal sacrifice. To think of them walking into the smell of freshly baked bread from the temple matron is a really wonderful a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful kind of picture in my head. And we've covered quite a lot of Asia, and something that, well, I'm so unfamiliar with the Pacific area myself. I've kind of got nothing to do with it, and so what I do know about it, my brother served in French Polynesia, and the church is seems to be so big in the Pacific, in Tonga, in Hawaii, and French Polynesia. It seems to be massive, like a huge percentage of the nations are Latter Day Saints. Can you share kind of why you think the restored gospel is related and resonated there so well, and specifically what the role of or the role that women had in particular in kind of strengthening that foundation and establishing the kingdom there.
Yeah, so if you look at church statistics, Tongan and Samoa, you're looking at almost half of the population are Latter-day Saints, right? So it's just huge. Uh, the church actually in the Pacific started down in French Polynesia and Tahiti, right, where you have the first missionaries that came through, and we learn a lot about the first missionaries, the elders, the brethren. But the stories that we don't highlight as much is the role of those lady missionaries,
Mhm.
right? That's first they call them lady missionaries, then sister missionaries that were the spouse of some of those early elders. And I think is also a great story of faith and sacrifice on those early years. You had to get a long boat ride for several days and weeks to get down there. You, in some cases, you brought your children along, and you worry about their health. Uh, some of these early sister missionaries who accompanied their husbands uh, had to worry about taking care of their family and their children, being a foreign country where you don't have the same medical services, being part of a different culture. Maybe you don't speak the language and you don't understand their culture, but they developed a great love for for the people, the Aboriginal people, who are very in tune with the spirit, right? Who have a great connection to uh, the land, to the ocean, but also a great connection to God and the things of the spirit. And so I think that's part of why the church has grown so much in the Pacific, because they already share many of the values that we share in regards to family and the importance of family, or the importance of our ancestors. And so teaching them about temple work, it was somewhat seamless, right? Because a lot of it is already part of their culture. But the women, I think, is very significant because we have, um, some of the first lady missionaries. They're the ones that will be starting school to
Mhm.
try to provide a schoolhouse and provide education, uh, to teach them how to read and write, how to do math, basic arithmetic, and also not just with formal education, but also health education in some cases, where they're sent to be health missionaries. And so they're teaching people hygiene, you know, washing their hands or taking care of their teeth, uh, and adapting also to the culture that is extremely foreign to them,
Mhm.
right? And then sometimes they make some cultural missteps because they're not familiar with the culture, and
Mhm.
then but their humility and desire to learn, right?
Mhm.
Being in a foreign country, in a foreign culture, where they're away from many of their families in Utah, and mail won't come until the next boat. That will be a month from now, right? And so I just amazed to see their faith and testimony. And after the church has church schools, elementary schools, secondary schools throughout the Pacific. We have several schools in the Pacific, and the first principal, that's a woman, and some of the challenges that they go through with a degree of discrimination, if you will, right? Because they're a woman and they've never had a woman principal before. There have always been men,
Mhm.
and even some pushback from the faculty, some pushback from members of the church that it's very painful experiences for that, but they continue and they work through that to help to continue to build a church in the Pacific.
I think we also have to look at the history a little bit differently. At the French Polynesia, the church sent the missionary about 100 years prior descended to the Asia. The era is the 1850s. So at that time, you cannot really call your family, or you have to, if your letter get to them is very lucky, right? And then probably what the food that they're eating, probably in the Polynesian country, they cannot even maybe find flowers. It's so hard, even find eggs and whatever. So those are hardship that we have to understand. So this sister accompanied their husband as a missionary. They are physically, probably culturally, emotionally stretched, and then they don't know much about it, but they decided to accompany their husband faithfully with their family. We are not talking about 2 years. They serve longer than that, right? The period of time. So we admire their faith and then their sacrifice that they share with us, and how much they put into the effort building the school, helping the local people to get to know God more, also with like the culture, and then trying to understand a little bit better. I think that is incredible when they can do that much sacrifice to me.
And then of course you have some of the stories we have are more, contemporary,
Hmm.
right? We have, for example, a wonderful story about uh, the Lesumas that in Fiji, right? Sister Lesuma serves there as a temple matron
Hmm.
right now. They're close to finishing their 3 years as the temple president and matron there.
Hmm.
But the her experiences in the church at BYU Hawaii, in her local ward, and all the way to now as a temple matron there in the Fiji temple. Just you kind of follow their stories and their beautiful experiences, the challenges that they experienced, the sacrifice that they made. Um, I just love, their stories, and you get to feel their emotion, right? Some of the emotional toll that they experience, um, in regards to their feelings of inadequacy, or their concern for their children, or their desire to support their husband, and then also help the local members and care for the local members. Uh, Very personal one-on-one experiences, really ministering to the one, like President Nelson teaches.
So you're talking about Lasuma in Fiji is the ancestor Emma, that when they were talking about, she's a key pioneer establishing the church in Fiji. And then because of her choice, she people, because at that time she went to her boys went to a Catholic run school. So people tell her that you have to stop taking your son to go to a Mormon church, otherwise your boys will be punished, receive punishment because of that. And then because her husband was a member, she fast every weekend to get a permission for him to let them to get baptized. Eventually, they get baptized. Then my husband never baptized, but they supported her decision. And then one thing that uh, the faith and the resilience of the missionaries and early members during that first year of set a pattern of persistence and hard work that would help the church to grow significantly over the next several decades in Fiji. So it's because of the sacrifice they don't want to give up. And then for her, Emma also served as Relief Society president for the next like 23 years. And then because of her faithful leadership, she helped so many people. And then people like to gather in her house, and then people like to come to her. And young and old mingle well due to her leadership. Old people like to come to her. Young people also like to come to her because of that. And of course, that's become a very important. And then La Silva is one of her descendants later on, and then they are serving in the temple right now with her husband in the temple presidency too. So is her daughter.
And what I love about that story is the
Mhm.
legacy that these women leave for their posterity,
Mhm.
right? And how their faith is passed on from one generation to the next, you know, and on. And they said you teach a man, and if one man joins the church, then you have helped one individual. But when you, how do you always say it? When you teach a mother, and then you bring the whole family
Yeah,
in
generation
a
affect
generation
generation.
to the church.
And then I really highly recommend that another chapter that I think is very well written. The penmanship, the way she writes is absolutely beautiful. Is the chapter of Tonga, Malay, Ongo Alope. She wrote this beautiful chapter. She using the writing, the breaking waves to describe her lives, and she was the first principal to be called in the Fiji, the church school,
Mm.
and anyhow, and she write it, and she have so many hardship. Her first parent got like divorced, and then she was raped by her aunt, and then her aunt got married, and then she got sent out, and then she got adopted eventually. So, but she always loves to read, and her English is amazing. When you read the chapter, it's so well written by her. And then but she every time she used tie it back to breaking the wave, and then she was just trying to stay above the water. And then the one thing that I really like what she said is she need to rely heavily on the tender mercy of Almighty to be able to ride above the wave, to keep going. Even though Felipe mentioned it a little bit that when she became the first principal, and she makes so many good
First female principal.
female principal
Yeah, Hona High.
in the Yola High School. A lot, a lot of people is like saying that
She had quite a bit
yeah,
of pushback
yeah, pushback, and then this was
because she's a woman, right?
yeah, this is what they said. Some felt that because Melee was not a priesthood holder, she was unfit to lead, and her leadership was doomed for the outset. So you can
Well,
see what kind of force she has, but she was appointed by not by her, by the priesthood leader that appointed to her. But she worked so hard to bring so many changes when she was a principal, and she loved her students and they care about how they educate them, and she's an absolutely amazing educator, and it's very amazing. So
She's in Tonga, right?
she's
Not
in
Fiji.
Tonga.
Yeah.
No, not Tonga. I mean Tonga. Sorry, not Fiji, but Tonga. She got her master and attempt to get her PhD as well. So anyway,
what I learned from you both when we last spoke about Mongolia is the process of editing and writing and collecting data for these books is massive and but also inspiring in that you're speaking to so many people about different rich histories and stories and personal experiences. And I just wonder, we talk about the experience of others, but were there any special experiences that you both had in the as you prepared and collated and put together this book?
yeah. Thank you for him. He has done so much work.
Well, no, not just me, right? My wife is a co-editor, and also Alici Langi is our other co-editor, and I think we've worked well together. But we're also grateful for the chapter authors, right? Because each of them have really done a good job to research and to be able to bring to light many of these stories, some that we weren't even aware of, right? Until we started going through and reading them. And I think it's this book is a little different than our previous book because our previous books we wrote the whole book. On this one, we certainly we wrote some of the chapters, but our role as the editor, the three of us, right, myself, Alici Langi, and my wife Petra, uh, our role was to help each of those chapter authors to be able to tell their stories, but also to make sure that to help them to be able to um, ensure that it's a high quality research that tells the story that is faithful to the story through the good research. And we worked with over 20 different individuals in this case. Some of them were writing their first publication. They never published
Wow.
anything before.
Yeah.
And so we have many who are first time authors or the first time they written a chapter or published anything. But we felt that it was important. Their stories were important. Some of them we didn't have to do a lot of hand holding. The others we had to do a little more hand holding. We even have some students
Yeah.
that helped as co-authors. So we're hopeful that this was helpful for many of them, so that they can then from this experience maybe will build a desire in them to tell more of their stories, so that we can only do so much, the two of us,
Yeah.
but we're hoping also to inspire others in the Asian Pacific area to do more research, church history research, and to be able to share more of the stories, so that we can multiply the effort, right?
Hmm.
So that we have more scholars that are doing more research and sharing more of those stories and the voices
Hmm.
of the women in the Asia Pacific area.
And also, during the conference, a lot of presenter like kind of like a talk story when they share their presentation. So as far as having a collaboration book effort with BYU, so we have to turn the talk story into more like a research paper.
More
So
robust
yeah, more
research.
robust research. So we have to guide some of those writers to see, oh, maybe we should add these or change that to make it more like a robust research, so we can publish at this point.
Yeah.
So it is a lot of hand holding in a way, but at the same time is rewarding because we can have this woman's voice can be shared to the world. That's very important to us. So.
Has this process changed the way at all you view the role of women in the church?
I just feel like, wow, I have to learn from them. They have so much unseen power that I will really want to have. So I want to learn from them. How can I have that kind of power? How can I help exercise the priesthood power even more in my life? I really want to do that and make me feel like, oh, I can serve in the temple and I can do so much more because of their examples, and then because of their um, selfless act, and then the sacrifice, and then the love for the people. They make this world to be a better place because of them.
Hmm. What about for you, Felipe, as well?
I think that for me, it's just gave me a greater appreciation for the women of the church, and I think that's what we hope the readers will gain as they read. That they will, you know, be able to see the impact of the women of the church in various areas, right? As missionaries, as temple matrons, as translators, as mothers of church leaders, as educators. Uh, but I think the way I was impacted is the way I hope that the readers will be impacted. That they will really learn about how much, and really I stand at awe to think about all that the women of the church do. In many times anonymously, behind the scenes, uh, but what an important and vital and crucial role they play in the restoration, right? And then I hope that we will get more of these women's stories. Um, that maybe some of the readers will be inspired to say, "Hey, I love this story. I should get my grandmother's story out there too, right? Because she was also one of the first lady missionaries in this country. Or I should get my auntie's story out because she was involved in the translation of, the scriptures or the hymn book or the church magazine or materials." We just hope that others will be inspired by the wonderful stories that are here. Uh, as editors, as we review some of these stories, we just, my heart goes out to many of these women and for their sacrifice. And sometimes I can't I have a hard time finishing the chapter because I'm just, bawling. I'm just crying as I read their stories and think about the sacrifice that they've made. In some cases, they have wonderful, supportive husbands and other members. In some cases, they walk the lonely road because their families are not members of the church, their spouse and their children maybe don't join the church or are not active in the church. And in some cases, they have even members of the church that feel, oh, you shouldn't step up so much. You should be in the background more, or you shouldn't be highlighted. You shouldn't be the principal. This should be a man should be the principal of the school or something. But as I read their stories and their struggles that they've gone, my heart goes out to them, and I just know that our Father in heaven uh, love his daughters, and that he's grateful for uh, the wonderful women of the church, his daughters, would help build the kingdom side by side, alongside the men of the church. But really, the women of the church, I think, don't receive as much light. They're not highlighted as much, and they don't receive as much attention. But they're indeed a powerful, powerful beacon of light that reflects in a way that men cannot do. They feel a critical, important role that only women can feel.
Okay. All of a sudden, I just remember my deceased mother always say this word. Is that if you grow up in a home without a father, you will be poor. But if you grow up in a home without a mother, you'll be doomed. So just like that in the church history, these women of faith, the couple author use a trailblazer to describe them. Mormon trailblazer or temple trailblazer to describe these important
Yeah,
sister pioneer women in the life. So we
Nachi, right? So it's
yeah,
Nachi in Japan.
Chicago and Chunachi, and then they do that, and then so I hope in return, I hope every woman in their heart they can tell themselves, I'm a trailblazer in a certain way too,
Yeah,
in their lives, so they
many of
can
them are trailblazers, right?
yeah, and then they can please share their voices, and then please share their incredible faith, and maybe through a video, maybe through a written word, or just tell their children and generation. And those are the words that need to be heard, and their words are as important as all these priesthood leader as well. So
Thank you for that, and thank you for what you both do in bringing these voices to into these accessible mediums that we can enjoy and feel touched by. And I feel very fortunate that I can relate to this when I think of specific examples of powerful women in Malaysia and Singapore where I served, and I
mhm,
think of them and the example that they showed to me, and it just um, whenever I think about it, it just moves me so much.
mhm,
Not only the sacrifices, but just the humble faith. And
mhm.
I'm so grateful for them. My life would be not as enriched without their examples. I learned so much from them, and I think about them often. And yeah, so grateful for them, and grateful for you both.
Mhm.
And the link to get the book will be in the description, so people will know where to find it. And I'm excited to
Yeah,
delve into it myself. I haven't had that much of an opportunity because it's just come out,
yeah.
so so I've done
Thank
a bit
you
of
so much for
research
doing
about
this
it.
interview with us. We really appreciate you. So help us to spread the words out, and then people can pay attention to these wonderful women. Thank you.
No, of course. The thanks go to you both for doing it all, and yeah, it's been so much fun. a great way to spend Halloween evening, which is what it is right now, hiding away from trick or treaters. But yes, thank you very much, both of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for watching For All the Saints. This show needs your help to grow. Please like the video, comment your thoughts, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone you think would enjoy it. Thank you.